This is like a Surface Pro, but it also has shortcut keys along the sides. It also has a textured screen that's fun to draw on, and it has a Wacom pen. Pinch me, this can't be real. Is it as good as it seems? Hello, my name is Brad. I review tech for creative professionals, and this is the Link Studio S1. A few years back, seemed like everybody was releasing a Surface Pro clone. We're talking about like a detachable keyboard, a kickstand, basically a tablet, Windows, laptop hybrid thing. But that flow of Surface Pro clones has really slowed down. This year though, man, they are back. This year I've reviewed several of them. I think this is the fourth one I've tested, if you count the Surface itself. Now this one is from a brand I'm not familiar with. It's called Link Plus. But this tablet is very interesting. Most Surface clones aren't meant for artists. Like, yeah, sure, you can use a Surface Pro for arts. Totally fine for that. But a Surface Pro is designed to like appease 10 different markets. You want to take notes, it's great for that. You want to watch content, it's great for that. They're trying to be everything for everyone, but this is built just for art. You have a 1440p screen. You have the customizable shortcut buttons along the side. I also mentioned before, this is a matte screen. That means it has a little bit of texture to it. So you're drawing with the pen, you have more control. And of course, the pen. This isn't an afterthought. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Wacom EMR pen. They did their homework. So on paper, this looks really promising. Let's see if it holds up. Over on the website, I wasn't sure how much does this cost. They sent this to me to test out, and they're selling it for $1,000 right now. So let's say that. In some places it said it should cost $2,000. Other promos material say $1,200. So I don't know. Keep looking for a deal on this one if you don't like the price you see initially. But $1,000 puts it in the Surface Pro territory. Well, kind of. This includes a lot of extra stuff. For example, the Surface Pro type cover, that costs extra. The Surface Pro pen, that costs extra. This comes with those. Actually, let's just jump in and take a look at everything that comes in the box. On the top is the keyboard itself. It's in its own box. The keyboard gets its job done. It's not bad. It magnetically attaches to the bottom. It's got a little trackpad here. Now, most Windows trackpads, you can just tap on them and that registers as a click. That's something I've gotten used to on Windows. This does not. You definitely have to physically click it. And the click isn't like super clicky. So it's just kind of okay in that way. But the keys are fine to click on. One thing is that the stand itself, the keyboard itself does not sit flush on the desk. Now the Surface folds over a little bit, so it's a little bit more stable. This doesn't, so it does kind of wiggle when you're typing on it. It didn't really bother me too much, but if you do a ton of typing, you're probably going to notice. On each side of the device, there is a USB Type-C port, so that's two of them. There's also a headphone jack and a USB Type-A port. One thing that did freak me out a little bit when I started using this is when you plug the power into the side of the laptop, there's an indicator. It's a little red light right next to the camera. That means that it's charging. However, I did not know that. I thought a red light next to your camera was the universal indicator for your camera's on. So that kind of freaked me out when I first booted this thing up. There's a volume rocker along the top. This was kind of funny because it was like backwards of how I thought it should be. I thought the button on the right should turn the volume up. That actually turned it down. I think that's because it's designed for it to be used in portrait, even though I never actually use it in portrait. There's also a little lock along the side. What that does is that locks the buttons on the front. So if you find yourself accidentally clicking them or touching that and you don't like what's going on, you can just turn that off. Now, I did not run into that at all. These buttons are fairly clicky. They're not recessed, which is kind of nice. Oftentimes the recessed buttons on tablets like this can get a lot of gunk and dirt kind of built up in them over time. This has a plastic over the buttons, so the buttons are still clicky, but they're not going to get as dirty fast, although that plastic could wear out over time if you're using the buttons a lot. There's also some software that controls the whole thing, so you can go in and you can change your shortcuts. The software is just okay. It gets the job done. There's also these sliders in the middle, like you could position your thumb there and you could zoom in and out with that, or you could rotate the canvas. When I was in the settings, those were fairly limited though. For example, I love to use sliders like that to change my brush size. I couldn't do that here. Basically, I could only use it for rotation and zooming in and out. Also, when I was using the software, occasionally it would like freeze up and become hard to use and I'd have to shut it down and restart it. Also in the box, we have a simple power adapter, and of course we have that Wacom powered pen. Now, since this is a Wacom pen, something that does happen from time to time is you're going to get false positives with your palm with this particular pen. Now, I found that when I was drawing, it wasn't actually putting lines on my canvas, which is great. That's something that really drives me nuts when I'm often using one of these pens. But one thing that did happen with the drawing that I have going on in the background here is that my palm did change my layers in Clip Studio, and that kind of drove me nuts. I had to undo a bunch of my work and redo it, all because I was drawing on my sketch layer. So you do have to be a little bit more careful when we're talking about palm rejection, like you might find on like the Apple Pencil or something like that. Now I am drawing here. I love drawing. If you're looking to learn more about the fundamentals of art, I have some classes over on my website, bradsartschool.com. Learn to draw in 60 days every day, a new lesson for 60 days. There's also my intro to digital art class where I talk about the techniques I use in my digital art. Both of those are over on my website. Check them out if you want to learn more. And over here we have the manual, we have a cleaning cloth, and a drawing glove. So let's take a look at the specs of this thing. This is a 13-inch screen. It's 2,160 pixels by 1,440 pixels. It is also a laminated display, and the colors actually look pretty good. This isn't like bragging about like great color range or anything, but I think it looks really solid. I didn't think the colors looked horrible at all. They looked decent. It was a solid screen, a nice mid-level screen. Now, what I liked and what really makes this appealing to artists is that matte coating, because what that does is it provides just a little bit of texture on that screen, which gives you just so much more control over your pen than you get on a really glossy screen like the Surface Pro. When you're drawing on a really smooth glass screen, your pen is going to slide around more. The Surface Pro, to offset this, ended up putting like rubbery nibs on the tips of the Surface Pen. Now that does give you more traction, but it doesn't feel natural at all. A matte screen with a decent pen does feel more paperish. Doesn't feel like paper, identical to paper, but it gives you more control like paper. Inside this thing, we have an 11th gen Intel Core i7 processor, and it's okay. It's an 11th gen processor. So now that's about 4 years old. That processor came out in 2020. That's one of the reasons that they're able to keep the price down in this thing. We also have 16 gigabytes of RAM, which was what I would recommend to anybody getting anything for Windows if you want to use it for art. So that's good. And we have 512 gigabytes of storage. Now, along the back, underneath the kickstand, there is a little port there. You can unscrew it and actually install your own storage if you need more down the road. But you're going to have to replace what's in there. So just a heads up there, you're going to have to do some backing up. All right, so let's take a look at this Wacom powered pen and see what we got. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this is a slightly different pen than what you will find in like a Wacom Cintiq Pro. That is their pro level pen, and this is a different pen because this is the pen that they are selling the technology to other vendors to so that they can make their own pens and use them in like Android tablets and Windows tablets and things like this. That also means I can take something like the Samsung S Pen, like this one right here, and I could just start drawing on it, and look at that, it works exactly the same way. Each pen's gonna be a tiny bit different. Like one thing I noticed with this thing is that the low end of the pressure curve is a little bit more blobby. This pen that it comes with actually feels a little bit better. I can get really light lines if I press really lightly. And if I use this on a Samsung tablet, it might behave a slightly different way. So there is some variation, but for the most part, I'm seeing kind of the same thing across all of the Wacom pens like this that I've used. So one thing that I'm always looking for, and I think I need a drawing glove for this because my hand is a little bit sweaty. There we go. Now my hand can slide a little bit better, and I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to just do a slow angled line, and I'm just going to look for some wobble, and I don't really get much at all with these pens. Some of that I'm getting is my own hand. There's maybe a tiny bit of wave. No, I think that's my hand. This is a really good pen when it comes to that sort of thing. One of the better pens out there. The other thing that I'd like to do is I like to do really fast hatch lines and then take a look at what's happening to the lines here. I get just a tiny bit of shoestringing, but honestly, when I zoom out, it doesn't look that bad. I do get some blobbing on the end, which does happen with these pens. In fact, I'm going to try this one. We'll do the same thing again. And yeah, I'm getting kind of something similar, a little checkmark blobby at the end. I can usually get rid of that sometimes by just slowing down my hatch lines. So if I get my hatch lines moving a little bit slower, let's increase the size of that pen and jump in here if I just slow it down a little bit, I can get those really nice lines that I'm looking for. The other thing I like to look for is the pressure level. So let me increase my pen size. Really light lines give me a really light, and then I start to apply more pressure and I can hold it well. That's something that I look for. I apply more pressure and it gets thicker. Less pressure, it gets lighter. It feels really good. It doesn't feel like it's really blowing out anywhere. I like to do like circles while holding one level of pressure just to see. Sometimes at the bottom of the circle, like the line will blow out. That's not really happening here. I feel like I have good control over this pen. Part of that's the textured screen, part of that is the Pentec working together. I think this is a really solid option, and comparing it directly to the Surface Pro, this is just a way better pen than the pen that comes with the Surface Pro, or that you can get for the Surface Pro. That just has more wave, you don't have quite as much control, it's got a different tip to it. I love the feel of this. It's so much better. So what do I think? I think they cut some corners here and there to keep the price down, but nothing really huge. Like, for example, that keyboard, it doesn't sit flush on the desk, so it doesn't feel quite as premium as like a Surface Pro. The sound, the speakers in this thing sound really tinny. They're not really great speakers. Of course, there's the volume button, which is a little weird. It takes getting used to. The kickstand on the back, when you fold it up, it doesn't quite sit flush, but that's okay. It works for what it is, which means you could set the kickstand up and this thing isn't gonna just fall over on its own. It sits up at a nice drawing angle when you're using it that way. The one thing that would give me pause here is the processor in this. This is an 11th gen processor. It is a little older. It's an i7, so it's not bad. But if we just go in and we look at the benchmarks between the i7 from this generation, the 11th gen, and compare it to what's going on in like a 13th gen processor, you're just getting so much better multi-core performance. And what that's going to mean is just how long is this product going to last you? Whereas if it did come with a better processor, or if the next generation comes with a better processor, you're just going to get so much more life out of that device than you are this one. It feels like you're jumping into the later half of the life cycle of that particular kind of process. But other than that, what we have here is a really solid tablet at a really decent price. I think what sells it for me is that pen, are those shortcut buttons. Those are things that are really hard to find on other devices. Obviously, a Surface Pro isn't going to have that. Many of the Surface Pro clones I've tried aren't going to have that. There is the Huion Canvas Studio 16, so if you're looking for something similar to this, that's probably the closest thing. Now, that doesn't have shortcut buttons along the face. However, it is a textured screen, and it does come with a Huion pen, and so it actually works really well, and it's a pretty good device. But that device also costs, I'm not sure how much more it costs. I think it's about $600 more. Right now it's listed at $550 more. Usually it costs about $700 more. So that's a significant extra cost there. That's a few years old. It's almost the identical to processor to this. It's an 11th gen i7 as well. So if I was comparing this to the Huion, I think this is a better value, even if the screen is a few inches smaller. But I love that people are jumping in and trying this out and trying to create something specifically for artists. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.